Inquiry-based learning, what is it, and how on earth can it help me homeschool? I'm going to discuss that now. Hello again, my name is Mel and you're watching Growing Together. Alright, so like I said, today I'm going to talk to you guys about inquiry-based learning, what it is and how it will help when we're trying to homeschool. In previous videos I've touched quite a bit on learning through play and why this is a really important thing for children to do, especially young children. I will link some of those videos in the description below, so please go and check those out. But today I want to talk a little bit more about inquiry-based learning for older children, primary school and even up. I do think I need a caveat for this. I am a trained primary school teacher, so I've not taught anything above grade 7, but the point still remains the same. Inquiry-based learning is a really important way that children are learning, that schools are focusing on. This type of learning will really help with learning from home. First of all, what is inquiry-based learning? Inquiry-based learning is a more holistic approach to learning rather than having a teacher standing in front of a class and giving facts out. Although don't get me wrong, that has its place. Inquiry-based learning is giving children the skills to go and actually formulate their own ideas of learning. This type of learning gives children a much stronger concept and idea and process of learning that they can then take and build on as they grow throughout their entire life. Inquiry-based learning helps children to develop critical and creative thinking, which is very important for all types of learning and in all types of situations. So much so that critical and creative thinking is a subheading within the Australian National Curriculum. I'm going to show you some excerpts on the screen somewhere with some of the different ways in which creative and critical thinking are actually incorporated into the Australian National Curriculum and how this is therefore part of the type of learning that children are expected to be doing at schools. The Australian curriculum says, in the Australian curriculum, students develop capability in critical and creative thinking as they learn to generate and evaluate knowledge, clarify concepts and ideas, seek possibilities, consider alternatives and solve problems. Critical and creative thinking involves students thinking broadly and deeply using skills, behaviours and dispositions such as reason, logic, resourcefulness, imagination and innovation in all learning areas at school and in their lives beyond school. So as you can see, inquiry-based learning is about developing these really in-depth processes behind thinking and learning. So it's not something that you can just stand in front of a class and give children. You need to help them to develop it. Teachers are trained to be able to help children to develop this in a variety of different ways by offering different activities, learning sequences, and creating experiences whereby children go and actually do the learning themselves. They go and make the inquiry, they go and find the information, they go and do the experiment. So these are ways in which inquiry-based learning is worked in a school. On the screen now is a little figure that I just found in the Australian National Curriculum. So in the middle we have creative and critical thinking. Around the outside we then have the different capabilities that children put into practice when they are thinking creatively and critically. So we have reflecting on thinking and processes, inquiring, identifying, experimenting and organising information and ideas, generating ideas, possibilities and actions, and analysing, synthesising and evaluating, reasoning and procedures. What on earth does all of that actually mean? Inquiry, we are helping children to develop the ability to be inquisitive and to put that inquisitiveness into practice by then going out and finding out information and researching. As you can see on the screen now, children pose questions and identify and clarify information and ideas and then organise and process information. So first of all, they think about how they're going to go and find the information that they need. Then they bring it down so that it's a bit clearer. So for example, in a classroom, I might have a variety of different topics that I want to talk about, and in a planning session, we might sit down and brainstorm some questions that you would ask and some ideas that you might want to know things about. So if you were thinking of sharks, the children could brainstorm some things that they wanted to know about sharks. How many different kinds of sharks are there? What do sharks eat? Where do sharks live? How do sharks reproduce and have babies. These are the sorts of things that children might want to know. Then we need to think about what kind of questions we can ask to get that information. Where would we go ahead and look for that information? These are all the sorts of things that children need to learn how to figure out how to ask and how to get that information. So we would set them up with an activity that would allow them to think first of all about what am I trying to find out, and then they can go ahead and figure that out. Next up, as you can see on the screen, generating ideas, possibilities, and actions. So that's what I was just talking about. They've come up with the general outline of what they want to know about. Now they need to sit down and figure out how to get that information. What are the questions they might ask to get that information? Next up, again on the screen, reflecting on thinking and processes. So here we are thinking about our thinking. So now we've got some questions and some ideas and things that we are going to go ahead and look up. Let's reevaluate. Let's make sure that all of these things make sense. So we're reflecting on our own processes. And this is an important tool that children and adults need throughout their lives. It's similar to learning through play because they are actually involved in the very act of creating the learning, which is very important to involve children and engage children in their own learning. Next up, we have analysing, synthesizing, and evaluating reasoning and procedures. So now we're bearing down even more into the way that we're looking at things. So we maybe went ahead and did some research into sharks, and then we looked again at the questions that we originally wanted to ask. We looked again at the information that we originally wanted to gather, and then we look at what we found. Does this meet the answers that we were actually looking for? Does this tell me enough? Does this tell me what I wanted to know? Now they need to bring in other aspects of their knowledge and learning to apply to those things. And this is all something that they are doing and learning as they go along and as they do it. But again, as a teacher or a parent, you are there to support them, to help them come up with those different ways of looking at things, to analyze their own thinking and their own learning and their own researching, to see how they're going with it and whether they need to reevaluate and rethink and potentially even do it again. The next thing that we have is critical and creative thinking in the learning areas. So I'll just put the first little bit of this because it does go into more detail about the specific subject areas. But basically what it says is that once you have the basis for this kind of creative and critical thinking, you can then apply it to a range of different subject areas. So it's not just a matter of teachers have a session every couple of weeks or whatever it might be where they explore creative and critical thinking. They help children to figure out how to apply these different skills of creative and critical thinking to the various different subject areas. And that does also include music and art and PE, as well as science and history and maths. So it's a really important skill set that goes across the entirety of children's learning and curriculum and is something that will stay with children for their whole lives. Something that you and I use all the time as well. So I know this all sounds really big and complex, and it is, but it's also a natural process that we do all the time that we need to help foster in our children and even in ourselves. Why is this something that would be helpful for home learning and homeschooling? Well, the good news is that it means that you don't have to have all the answers, and it means that you don't have to be sitting constantly in front of your children and giving them information. You don't have to try and be that old school idea of a teacher standing in front of a classroom and delivering knowledge. Like I said, this has its place, and don't get me wrong, that might be something that teachers do on occasion, but it's certainly not the way that we all teach anymore, and it's certainly not something that you need to replicate in your own home. So what can you do? Well, like I've mentioned in previous videos, you can think of some projects that your children can do. So going back to STEM, which I did talk about in a previous video, and I will link that below, which is science, technology, engineering, and maths. Oh no, photobomb of a peanut. And what that basically means is that it is a combination of all of those different fields into one learning package. An example of that would be if you give children a different building tool like Lego and you challenge them to build a bridge and you give them certain parameters. So the bridge has to be so high, it has to span a river that is 1 meter wide, and it has to be high enough for a boat to go under. So obviously it's to scale, but it has to therefore be 1 meter high. And they have to figure out how to build that bridge so that it's actually going to be stable, so that cars can go across it or people can go across it, so it doesn't fall over, so it doesn't sag in the middle or break. Although they're playing, they are learning about engineering and technology, science and maths. They're learning to figure out how those things work together to create something like a bridge. They're learning to figure out how to use tension and momentum, how to use maths, how to figure out how to make a structure that would actually stand. Again, it looks like play, and it is, but it's also learning because you've given them those parameters. They have to go ahead and figure out how to make this structure work. So they will need to experiment. They will need to build it and see if it stands. If it falls over, they need to say, okay, so why did it fall over? If it's saggy in the middle, they have to figure out a way that they can make it stop sagging. How would they do that if they have to allow for boats to go under it? So they might need to get out cars, they might need to get out a toy boat, they might need to get these things out and experiment. This is the sort of thing that challenges them, and by setting those structures around the activity, you are helping them to learn how to figure those things out, and that is what creates that critical thinking. STEM is a fantastic thing that you can use at home because it allows you to actually give them something like Lego or a bunch of boxes or Play-Doh or any other kind of building thing and actually know that they are learning and that they will enjoy it. And you don't have to sit and tell them information. You might have to spend half an hour coming up with the overall plan, but that half an hour will then give you 2 or 3 hours worth of time where your children are really focused on something and really enjoying it. Another example is helping them to learn how to research. So setting them a project where they have to go and do some research, find some things out, maybe write a report about that research. This is something, again, that will take you probably about half an hour to put together an overall plan, but then they can go ahead and do the research, and it should take them 1 hour, 2 hours to go ahead and do that research. And that's a lot of learning that they're doing in that time. A really great way to make sure that it is engaging and that it is something that they will actually go ahead and do is to sit down and make the plan with them. So say for example your child absolutely loves playing Minecraft. They could do a research project around Minecraft. They could go and find out who originally invented or created Minecraft. Was it a group of people? Was it just one person? What platform does it use? How is Minecraft delivered to all of the different people that play Minecraft? What is the aim of Minecraft? Is there an overarching storyline that you need to complete? Is it a first-person shooter game? Or is it a strategy game? Or is it an open-ended fantasy roleplay game? For older children, you might then use their research into Minecraft to challenge them to actually go ahead and think about creating a video game. How would they create the video game? What type of game would it be? What would be the main point of the video game? Who is going to be the main audience for that video game? What are some art styles they might use in the video game? What would be the platform that they might think about trying to get that produced? What would be the gameplay like? All of the stuff that they've done to research Minecraft can springboard other different kinds of research and activities that they can do. And this is all the sort of thing that will create that kind of critical and creative thinking that will encourage them to really hone in and do some research, to evaluate their research, to evaluate how these things would actually play out in a different scenario, to critically look at their own work and to see how they could apply that work to a different area of study or a different project. A really important thing to remember is that children who are engaged in their own learning, who have been consulted in the construction of the learning, who have had the ability to lead their own learning, will be far more engaged and interested. If your child loves Minecraft or loves a particular band or loves a particular kind of artwork or loves manga, give them a research project that involves that love. They will want to go and get that information. Give them some parameters, sit down with them and try and figure out what the parameters are and help them to hone their questions a bit more. Like I said, that might take you half an hour, but that half an hour of time sets you up for a good couple of hours worth of them learning and thinking and developing all of that higher order critical and creative thinking that they need for all of the subject areas. So this is something that teachers and schools are constantly trying to think about and do as well. So you giving these projects and this encouragement to your children is teaching, is helping them to learn and to grow. I wrote an email to a friend of mine a while ago with a bunch of different suggestions for different activities that they could do with their children or set their children up to do by themselves as part of home learning. I will put all of that stuff in the description below so that you can go and have a look at all of that yourself. I'll also put links to the other videos where I've talked about the variety of different subjects that I've discussed today as well in the description, so you can go and have a look. If you have any questions or comments or anything you want to say to any of the things that I have said in this video, please do comment below. I'd love to know how you're going with everything. I'd love to talk to you about your experiences and have a bit of a dialogue about what is working, maybe what's not. We can get ideas and suggestions from each other. That'd be fantastic. Anyway, I really hope that you enjoyed this video and that you found it interesting and valuable. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and I will see you later.